Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Wednesday, May 28, 2025. President Donald Trump responds to the nickname some on Wall Street have given him to describe his tariff policy, and the name includes the word chicken. The president also asked about Elon Musk, saying that he's disappointed with the amount of spending in the budget reconciliation One Big Beautiful Bill passed by the House. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy calls for more spending to upgrade air traffic control systems as he gives an update from Newark Airport. We'll hear from two members of Congress, one Democratic, one Republican, at town hall meetings during this congressional recess week. Vice President JD Vance promotes cryptocurrency at a Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas. Plus the latest on the Trump administration's pause on international student visas. Interim U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, was sworn in. And the United Nations Security Council holds a meeting on the troubled new attempt to bring humanitarian aid to Gaza. Story from CNBC. President Donald Trump on Wednesday pushed back against an emerging critique of his on-again, off-again tariff threats, which have been derisively summed up as the taco trade. The term, coined by a Financial Times columnist, stands for Trump always chickens out, describes a pattern in which Trump announces heavy new tariffs, sending markets tumbling, and then later pauses or lightens them, causing markets to rebound. The president got the question during a news conference in the White House Oval Office.
President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, and then I chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country, and because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. And I said, okay, I'll give you till Jeanine. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, we'll meet anytime you want. And we have an end date of July 9th. You call that chickening out? Because we have $14 trillion now invested, committed to investing when Biden didn't have practically anything. This country was dying. You know, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. I went to Saudi Arabia. The king told me. He said, you got the hottest we have the hottest country in the world right now. 6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation. You set a number. And if you go down, you know, if I set a number at a ridiculous high number and I go down a little bit, a little bit, they want me to hold that number, 145% tariff. Even I said, man, that really got up. You know how it got? Because of fentanyl and many other things, and you added it up. I said, where are we now? We're at 145%. I said, whoa, that's high. That's high. They were doing no business whatsoever, and they were having a lot of problems. We were very nice to China. I don't know if they're going to be nice to us, but we were very nice to China. And in many ways, I think we really helped China tremendously because, they were having great difficulty because we were basically going cold turkey with China. We were doing no business because of the tariff, because it was so high. But I knew that. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question. Go ahead. To me, that's the nastiest question.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office. Wall Street today, the Dow down 244, NASDAQ down 98, S&P down 32. From Reuters, Germany's leading automakers are in talks with Washington over a possible import tariff deal, seeking to use their U.S. investments and exports as leverage to soften any blow, three people familiar with the matter said. BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen hoped that the talks with the U.S. Department of Commerce would result in a deal in June. One of the people said, but this would be contingent on companies pledging substantial investments that would sway the U.S. administration, reporting from Reuters. From the Hill, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer of New York on Wednesday ripped President Trump's plan to give up federal control of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as a scheme to line the pockets of the wealthy that will likely increase average mortgage costs. Schumer warned the average family could be hit with a $1,800 to $2,800 increase in annual mortgage costs. He said that experts have warned for years that privatizing Fannie and Freddie, which finance 70% of the mortgage market, would threaten the financial security of middle-class Americans and make it more expensive to buy homes. That was from The Hill. President Trump posted on Truth Social, "I am working on taking these amazing companies public, but I want to be clear, the U.S. government will keep its implicit guarantees, and I will stay strong in my position on overseeing them as president." President Trump was also asked today about criticism from billionaire Elon Musk, who recently stepped away from running DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, about the budget reconciliation bill that House Republicans passed last week. That's the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, containing a lot of the president and Republicans' agenda on tax cuts, spending cuts, work requirements on Medicaid, reducing clean energy tax credits, more money for border security and defense, and a whole lot more. First, here's Elon Musk in an interview with CBS Sunday Morning. The clip was released Tuesday night.
I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, everything he's done on DOGE gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both. My personal opinion.
Elon Musk in a CBS interview. The clip was released Tuesday night. Full interview airs on Sunday. President Trump got a question about it today in the White House Oval Office.
Mr. President, Elon Musk in a television interview criticized the One Big Beautiful Bill, saying he was disappointed it didn't cut enough, essentially, that it undercut the DOGE efforts. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the reaction's a lot of things. Number one, we have to get a lot of votes. We can't be cutting. We need to get a lot of support. And we have a lot of support. We had to get it through the House. The House was, we have no Democrats. If it's up to the Democrats, they'll take the 65% increase. If that doesn't get approved, this country is going to have a 65% increase in taxes and lots of other problems, big problems, almost bigger than that. But we'll have a 65% increase as opposed to the largest tax cut in the history of our country. We will be negotiating that bill, and I'm not happy about certain aspects of it, but I'm thrilled by other aspects of it. That's the way they go. It's very big. It's the big, beautiful bill, but the beautiful is because of all of the things we have. The biggest thing being, I would say, the level of tax cutting that we're going to be doing. We're going to make people really be able to. We'll have the lowest tax rate we've ever had in the history of our country, and tremendous amounts of benefit are going to the middle-income people of our country, low and middle-income people of our country. So we're going to see what happens, because the Senate, as you know, is negotiating with us, and they have to then go back to the House, and, it's got a way to go. But I have to say, Speaker Johnson and Thune have done an incredible job. John Thune has done a fantastic job, and they're working together with me and others. And I think we have an amazing, if we pull this off, remember, we have 0 Democrat votes because they're bad people. There's something wrong with them. They'll let people pour into our country. Single biggest problem is we had 21 million people pour into our country, probably higher than that. And they're people that weren't supposed to be here. And many of those people are bad. Murderers, drug dealers, the mentally insane. They were closing mental institutions all over the world, not South America, all over the world. They're coming into our country, and we're getting them out. And we're having a hard time because some judges aren't making it very easy for us, and it's tough enough. They approved that. They allowed that to happen to our country. We don't have one Democrat vote. And if I were a Democrat, I'd be voting for this bill, and I'd get elected to any position I want as a Democrat. They're crazy. They're voting for a 65% tax increase. And they're only doing it for hatred. They're not doing it for any reason. They know it's terrible. Terrible politics, in my opinion. But so we have no Democrat votes. That means we have to get almost all Republican votes. And I think we're very close to doing that. I think it'll be very successful. Yeah, please.
President Donald Trump holding a news conference in the White House Oval Office today. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican of Louisiana, posting on X, the House made sure to build on DOGE's success within the One Big Beautiful Bill. Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, has made an important point about the two efforts. DOGE found savings in discretionary spending, such as funding agencies, while our One Big Beautiful Bill secured over $1.6 trillion in savings in mandatory spending, such as Medicaid. Both are historic and take huge steps towards addressing our debt and deficit. Part of the statement from Speaker Mike Johnson. He also said the House will be quickly taking up a rescissions package once the White House sends it, and Politico reports that it is on the way, according to two House Republicans granted anonymity to speak to Politico. Politico writing the $9.4 billion package set to land on Capitol Hill reflects only a fraction of the DOGE cuts, which have already fallen short of Musk's multi-trillion-dollar aspirations. The two Republicans said it will target NPR and PBS, as well as foreign aid agencies that have already been gutted by President Donald Trump's administration. That was from Politico. As for the One Big Beautiful Bill, as President Trump mentioned, the Senate will soon be taking it up. House and Senate are on recess this week. They're back next week. But the positioning continues. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican of Wisconsin, was on WISN Talk Radio in Milwaukee on Tuesday about why he does not support the House-passed version.
You pass the One Big Beautiful Bill as it's constructed now, that will probably add, my guess is about $4 trillion. Again, you can argue back and forth what revenue is going to be.
Right.
You got to focus on spending. And right now they're projecting about $89.3 trillion in spending. The House says, okay, they're going to cut $1.5 trillion. Well, they're going to add at least $300 billion for border and defense. So it's really about 1.2. That's literally about a 1.3% reduction in spending over that time period. When we've grown spending, again, from $4.4 trillion to $7 trillion over a 10-year period, that's a $29 trillion difference. So again, these numbers are massive. The $1.5 trillion, as I said, it doesn't even come close to meeting the moment or doing what we need to do. And bottom line is we need presidential leadership. He needs to embrace, and by the way, he did when I was in the White House with him twice. I laid these options out, showing how reasonable it would be to return to $6.5 trillion. And again, there are a lot of senators thinking that's probably about the number for next year, for fiscal year 2026. But again, I think he's been wrapped up in so many other things. He loves the slogan. He loves the One Big Beautiful Bill. I know he does because he talked about it in the White House. But you have to look at the substance of it. And by the way, I don't write the headlines. That was a Wall Street Journal headline, but I wasn't unhappy with it. The ugly truth is that this One Big Beautiful Bill, it doesn't meet the moment. We have to do far better. And by the way, I've got a great video that I had my staff together, pinned to the top of my X page. It shows the president starting out promising to balance the budget, and then members of his administration in one way, shape, or form saying, we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. It ends with the question, so are we willing to fix it? Right now, the House, they weren't willing to.
Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin, on WISN Talk Radio in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on Tuesday. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat of Washington State, the Appropriations Committee ranking member, has been posting short videos this week about various aspects of the Republicans' budget reconciliation bill. Here are two from Tuesday about SNAP, the food assistance program, and the Medicaid health insurance program.
We should not be cutting off food assistance so Trump can cut his fellow billionaires a massive check. These cuts won't make things more efficient. They will not solve any problems. They just take food away from people who need it most. Investing in nutrition assistance, investing in SNAP, that's an investment in people. My family relied on food stamps briefly when I was a kid. Our country had our back. And all 7 of us kids grew up to give back to our communities in different ways. This shouldn't even need to be said, but if Republicans won't listen to common sense and common decency, then we are going to get a megaphone, shout it from the rooftops, hands off SNAP. Now, as you all know, Washington State has one of the strongest, most inclusive SNAP programs in the country. So you can bet I'm going to continue to be one of its strongest champions in Congress. I am not going to stand by while Republicans push families off this program and slash it to ribbons. And I'm not going to be quiet as they take food from our kids' mouths. I am standing up, I am getting loud, and I'm making your voices heard. We are going to fight for SNAP and for our families. In the middle of the night last week, the House Republicans passed a massive bill that dramatically cuts Medicaid. I'm here today in Seattle talking to providers about the impacts to them and their patients. This is going to mean huge impacts to people here in Washington State, raising their health care costs, cutting them off altogether, and we are going to go back and fight because why do they want to cut Medicaid? to give a tax cut for billionaires. We're not going to let that pass, but we need your help. Speak up now.
Two videos from Senator Patty Murray, Democrat of Washington State, this week. Story from CQ Roll Call. Last week's House vote on a sweeping reconciliation bill encompassing much of the Republicans' legislative agenda is already becoming a focal point in the nascent campaign for control of Congress next year. Party campaign committees and outside groups have already announced ad campaigns centered on the measure. From the New York Daily News, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy vowed Wednesday that improvements should significantly ease delays and safety concerns at troubled Newark Liberty Airport by the 4th of July holiday. After weeks of chaos and a shaky Memorial Day weekend, the major hub, Duffy claimed there is light at the end of the tunnel. As a new runway nears completion, new fiber optic cable comes online, and several newly trained air traffic controllers start work. That was from the New York Daily News. Secretary Duffy also said at the news conference at Newark Airport that the money the House Republicans included in the budget reconciliation bill, the one big beautiful bill for airport upgrades, is a good start, but not enough.
There's a lot of questions about full staffing of controllers versus how many we have right now. We have 3 or 4 controllers working in the TRACON at a time. So let me just briefly talk about that. As Chris will tell you, safety is the priority. And if we don't feel something is safe, we will stop or we will slow things down. So on average, in Newark, they're running about 54 flights an hour for departures. We've brought that down right now. Departures are at 28 an hour. Okay, when the new runway comes online, June 15th, we're going to bump that from 28 to 34. It's going to stay that way until October, until we bring these controllers up to speed and add them to the airspace. And when that happens, we'll do another evaluation and see how much, if any, we can increase those numbers. But we have enough controllers working the Philly TRACON to control the airspace with the limited amount of traffic that we've got the airlines to agree to. So some have asked, is the airspace safe? Is it safe to travel by airplane? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Of course it is, because we've slowed things down. And as we, again, finish the runway and as we train up more controllers, we'll do another evaluation on how we can increase those departures out of Newark when we feel it's appropriate. And so that's the state of play in Newark right now. And before I turn it over to the acting administrator, I think this truly is a moment to look at what kind of system we're using, what kind of equipment we use, what kind of telecom we use. And it's a call to action to make sure we build a brand new air traffic control system. Now, you saw how fast Verizon worked with us to lay this fiber line. That's just an example of what's going to happen should the Congress give us the money to do this brand new build. And by the way, it's a nationwide plan. We have systems all over the country. But we need the Congress to act. I want to thank the House. They put $12.5 billion into the big, beautiful bill that's going to go towards this infrastructure project. That won't be enough. I know the Senate's going to look, can they find money to put in to this build? But we are going to need them to fully fund this project, number one. And number two, they got to clear the permitting process for us. If we have to go through a laborious permitting process, it's going to add years on. And adding years on a system that's already showing its age is unacceptable.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy at a news conference at Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey. This is Washington Today. A congressional recess week is a time when many members of Congress hold town hall meetings hearing concerns from their constituents. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, Republican from Iowa, was in Decorah, Iowa today.
I got into this because I am a mom. I have a 14 and 12-year-old. They were 3 and 5 when I first ran. So they've kind of grown up seeing some of the changes we've been able to make. Max and Jack, and my husband and I, Matt and I have been married for almost 17 years this year. It goes fast. And boy, I tell you, we have a 14-year-old and we're about to enter summer break. So if you've ever seen a 14-year-old boy eat, it's pretty impressive right now what we're going through. So all of you facing the grocery bills, if you have sons or grandsons, I'm sure you can certainly relate to that. I think it's important to note that when we look at last year and what happened with the election, I think Americans overwhelmingly rejected the status quo for the country. We were seeing an open border, high inflation. We were seeing hardworking men and women in Iowa and our country feel like their voices were not heard. Families in Iowa have told me for the last 4 years that we want to make sure we have safe streets, we have affordable groceries and gas, and that kids have opportunity to be able to live out the American dream. And that is what President Trump is delivering for us. And the president is, I believe, fighting for you and fighting for me. I'm fighting alongside of him. And I think God saved President Trump's life in Butler. I think he saved his life in Butler, Pennsylvania for a reason. I think that he is helping us to save and redirect the future of our country. He is helping deport criminal illegal aliens rather than letting them roam our streets freely. He is ending the abuses of taxpayer dollars rather than treating your money like monopoly money. And he's unleashing American energy to help drive those costs down. I think Memorial Day gas was adjusted for inflation the lowest it's been in decades, so we should thank his policies for that. And he is protecting us, women and girls, instead of trying to erase us. Under President Biden, they were trying to call us birthing people. I don't think that's the right term. We are not birthing people. We are mothers. And I am a mom fighting for other moms across the country, and I think this is too important of a fight to back down on, so I will continue to stand up for our girls and our women. Iowa is a model for the rest of the nation, thanks to the leadership of our great legislators and our Governor, Kim Reynolds. Our state has prioritized education and parental involvement. They have lowered taxes for hardworking families, ensuring our communities are safe. We are blessed by her leadership, and I am blessed to call her a friend as well. And I've made it my goal to make sure that Washington, D.C. can run a whole lot more like the great state of Iowa. Iowa common sense. My commitment to accessibility and transparency will continue to guide me as your representative every day.
Congresswoman Ashley Hinson, Republican of Iowa since 2020, opening up her town hall meeting in Decorah, Iowa today. Congressman Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, held a town hall meeting Tuesday in Littleton along with Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat from Colorado. Jason Crow has been a member since 2018.
One of the things that's difficult just as a citizen is to keep track of the plethora of events. You open the newspaper and there's something else. You go, oh my goodness, I never thought that would happen. And that whether it's an economic policy, whether it's a medical policy, whether it's how we're treating immigrants in our country, it is just over and over again every day. And so I'm interested in your advice in terms of the ways that interested, active citizens can be helpful in supporting driving that stake in a way that is meaningful right now while he's in power.
I will keep letting you go first, or I'll go first. You whatever you want to do.
We're going to work out. I'll just answer the question. I'm just answering the question.
I don't want him thinking that I'm avoiding the hard questions either.
Somewhere in there is a how many elected officials that screw in a light bulb joke.
Or all
right. Yeah, listen, it does seem unrelenting. First of all, I'm not surprised by anything they're doing, because it's what they said they were going to do. It's in Project 2025. It's literally written down. I am astonished by the pace of it. The sheer speed of which it's happening has been shocking to me. So we don't have the luxury, though, to take passes. We just don't have the luxury to say, I'm not going to do this one, I'm not going to do this one, I'm going to focus. We have to fight on every front. And we have to put speed bumps, as many as we can, to slow these things down. Right? We just have to. And we are working so hard. And so are many of you and many of the people that I called out at the beginning to try to fight back and to protect our community. But this also will not be solved in Washington. You know, this fix that we're in is not going to be solved by me or Michael or any of the other elected officials. We have a critical role to play, a very important role to play, and really important jobs in fighting back. And not just fighting back, but also building something new, have an alternative vision an idea for people to choose. But ultimately, this is going to be solved by all of us. Right? Washington, in the history of America, Washington has never driven change. It hasn't. It's set policy, it's responded to things, it's helped change the trajectory, but real change has always come from the country. Right? And if we're going to turn around the polarization, the partisanship, the entrenched vitriol that we see growing, the extremism, it's going to have to be by reinvigorating civic life in America.
Congressman Jason Crow, Democrat from Colorado, at a town hall meeting in Littleton, Colorado on Tuesday. Also there, Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat of Colorado. House and Senate are off for this Memorial Day holiday week. They're back next week. Straight from CBS News, Vice President JD Vance on Wednesday touted the Trump administration's ties with the cryptocurrency industry, a once fringe business that President Trump and his allies have embraced in recent months. Vance told the Bitcoin 2025 conference in Las Vegas, "I'm here today to say loud and clear, with President Trump, crypto finally has a champion and an ally in the White House." Vance said he knows a lot of people in 2024 chose to speak up and get involved, and he needs them to step up again. Reporting from CBS News, here is the Vice President.
We've got to clean up the wreckage that the last administration left us, and since day one, that is exactly what we've been trying to do. Our administration, we prioritize eliminating the rules, the red tape, and the lawfare that we saw aimed at crypto by our predecessors. We're ending the weaponization of federal regulations against this community. To put it simply, Operation Choke Point 2.0 is dead, and it's not coming back under the Trump administration. And by the way, it's crazy that was ever even controversial, the idea of using the regulatory power of the government to crush an industry and to crush people who espoused a view that you didn't like. It's crazy, but let my words today serve as Operation Choke Point. Let me serve as its obituary. Now this is my vow to every single person here. You will never see this administration trying to handicap your community or diminish the impact it's had on the economy. Instead, we reject the Biden administration's legacy of death by 1,000 enforcement actions. We reject regulators. Maybe the most important thing that we did for this community, we reject regulators, and we fired Gary Gensler, and we're going to fire everybody like him. And we know that people like Gary Gensler, the game that they played is that under the pretense of consumer protection, they attacked every single effort to democratize our financial markets, and that is over.
Vice President JD Vance at the Bitcoin 2025 conference in Las Vegas, referring to Gary Gensler, who was chair of the SEC, U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, during the Biden administration. Other speakers at the conference include President Donald Trump's sons Don Jr. and Eric, Chris LaSavita, who co-managed Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, and David Sachs, a venture capitalist who is the White House's crypto czar. More from the CBS News article on the vice president's speech. Mr. Trump and his family also have financial interests in crypto, which makes up $2.9 billion of his net worth, according to one recent report. Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Truth Social, announced Tuesday it is raising $2.5 billion to invest in Bitcoin. Meanwhile, businesses linked to the president launched a Trump-branded meme coin earlier this year, and Mr. Trump hosted the digital currency's top investors at his Virginia Golf Club last week. The president and his sons are linked to crypto exchange World Liberty Financial, and Eric Trump co-founded a Bitcoin mining venture that's seeking to go public. The moves have drawn criticism from Democrats and some ethics experts who argue Mr. Trump's crypto ventures pose a conflict of interest, and investing in them could be a quick route to gaining access to the president. That was from the CBS News article. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea. It's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. Another article from CBS News. Days after his administration moved to stop Harvard University from enrolling foreign students, President Trump said at a news conference Wednesday that the Ivy League college should set a limit for how many international students it accepts. According to Harvard's website, international students make up 27.2% of total enrollment at the school in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The State Department on Tuesday ordered U.S. embassies to temporarily stop scheduling new student visa appointments. Mr. Trump said he wants to know more about whether international students at Harvard are troublemakers and where they are coming from. Part of the reporting from CBS News. The President answered a question in the White House Oval Office.
Mr. President, on Harvard, there were some Jewish students protesting on campus yesterday. They said they don't want you making these huge cuts, cutting off student visas to Harvard in their name, because they feel
Harvard
like it
has
makes
to show
them
us,
more of a target.
Okay, Harvard has to show us their lists. They have foreign students. About 31% of their students are foreign-based, almost 31%. We want to know where those students come. Are they troublemakers? What countries do they come? And we're not going to, if somebody is coming from a certain country and they're 100% fine, which I hope most of them are, but many of them won't be, you're going to see some very radical people. They're taking people from areas of the world that are very radicalized, and we don't want them making trouble in our country. So I saw yesterday that in the middle of the UK, there was a nice young man. He wants to go back to school at Harvard, and he looked good to me, but I want to check his past. But we want to be able to see why, these countries aren't helping us. They're not investing in Harvard and all of we are. So why would 31%, why would a number so big? I think, number one, I think they should have a cap of maybe around 15%, not 31%. We have people who want to go to Harvard and other schools. They can't get in because we have foreign students there. But I want to make sure that the foreign students are people that can love our country. We don't want to see shopping centers exploding. We don't want to see the kind of riots that you had. And I'll tell you what, many of those students didn't go anywhere. Many of those students were troublemakers caused by the radical left lunatics in this country.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office. Harvard University government professor Ryan Enos was one of the speakers Tuesday at a rally for international students at Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
The attack on Harvard, the attack that is on all of you, is at the center of an attack on democracy, an attack on the rule of law. There's a reason that Donald Trump's attempt to keep international students out of Harvard was blocked by a judge in less than 24 hours. It was blocked because it's blatantly illegal. It not only violates statutory law, but it violates the American constitutional protections of freedom of speech and due process. Freedom of speech and due process, these are the foundations of the American system. These are the foundations of a free society. But Donald Trump is attacking these freedoms because they get in the way of his authoritarian takeover. This is what authoritarians do. And look, I know it may surprise you because he seems so obsessed with us, but Donald Trump doesn't actually care about Harvard. He wants to take Harvard down because universities stand for free ideas and for free speech. Free ideas and free speech get in the way of authoritarians. And so, like authoritarians before him in places like Russia, like Turkey, and like Hungary, Donald Trump is attacking universities. And like other authoritarians, Donald Trump is attacking the most vulnerable members of our society, including immigrants. But let me tell you, he underestimated Harvard, and he underestimated all of you.
That's right!
Harvard stood up and said no. You all stood up and said no. And guess what? We are going to keep saying no because we understand what is at stake here.
Harvard University government professor Ryan Enos at a rally at Harvard on Tuesday. Jeanine Pirro was sworn in today as interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. The ceremony was in the White House Oval Office. Jeanine Pirro was selected by President Trump after his first pick, Ed Martin, resigned as interim attorney and withdrew to be the nominee for the position permanently. President Trump praised Jeanine Pirro's qualifications.
In addition to her stellar legal career, Jeanine also excelled in news media as you know, and she's become one of the most beloved political figures through her time on television, because she's been very, very successful at a thing called television. She got out of what she was doing, and frankly, she does them both great, but she's really, to me, she'll always be known as a great lawyer and a great prosecutor, which is what she's doing now. So Jeanine Pirro, I have no doubt, will be an exceptional U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, one of the truly most important positions in our country, of any position, where she will restore public safety in our nation's capital, break up vicious street gangs and criminal networks, and ensure equal justice under the law. You'll see very, very big improvements in the D.C. area, that I can promise you.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office. Jeanine Pirro, also a former judge. After the oath was administered by Attorney General Pam Bondi, Jeanine Pirro spoke.
Long ago, I went to law school to study about justice and to bring justice to victims of violent crimes, women, children, and the elderly. I fought to give them a voice in a system that was both blind and deaf to their concerns. I dedicated my heart and soul to making sure that there was a system that responded to them. My profile and my prosecutorial successes garnered public attention, and my life took unexpected turns. Through all of this, President Trump, you have remained as steadfast as one of my earliest supporters and champions. You never wavered. You were always steadfast, trustworthy, and confident. Today, Mr. President, you bring me back to my roots. And it is a larger arena, but no less an arena where we need justice, where we need to send a message that justice will be honored in the District of Columbia. And just last week, here in our nation's capital, two people on the brink of beginning their life had hopes and dreams that were never realized, because a cold-blooded murderer made a decision to shoot them down on the streets on a cold, rainy night in our nation's capital. This will not go without just accounting. My voice should be heard loud and clear. No more tolerance of hatred, no more mercy for criminals. Violence will be addressed directly with the appropriate punishment. And this city will again become a shining city on a hill in an America that President Trump has promised to make great again and will make safe again. Mr. President, America thanks you, and I thank you.
Interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, in the White House Oval Office after taking the oath. U.S. Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger is retiring on Friday. He started his law enforcement career in 1977 as a police officer in Fairfax County, Virginia. He took over the U.S. Capitol Police in 2021, soon after the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, and he spoke about that in an interview with WTOP Radio in Washington.
For my first 42 years of being a police officer, that I was serving my community. And I feel today like I'm serving my country. And I'll tell you, a good example was the day that all the January 6th defendants were pardoned. That was a day that I was angry and as frustrated about that as I've ever been professionally. But what it made me feel like is somebody's got to stay here and stand up for these cops. My cops know what happened on January 6th. They know what happened. They were here. I'm not worried about my own safety. I mean, I've gotten threats to my life since I probably about 3 or 4 years into my career as a police officer back in the 70s. I mean, I got the first threat against my life, and I've continued to get, especially as a chief, you'll get, threats periodically.
U.S. Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger speaking to WTOP Radio in Washington, D.C. He is retiring on Friday. For fiscal year 2026, the Capitol Police have requested $967.8 million. It's an increase of $176.3 million, or 22%, over the frozen 2024 enacted levels provided in the full year CR or continuing resolution. Some other news about pardons today. From Spectrum News, President Trump issued a full pardon on Wednesday to former Staten Island Congressman Michael Grimm, a Republican lawmaker who represented Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn in Congress from 2011 through 15, pleaded guilty in December 2014 to aiding and assisting the preparation of a false tax return. He served 7 months in prison, 1 month of house arrest, and 200 hours of community service. Grimm admitted to, among other things, concealing $900,000 in gross receipts from a Manhattan restaurant he was a member of called Healthalicious. An accountant then used the false information to file false federal and state tax returns for the restaurant. That was from Spectrum News. President Trump also today, during his White House Oval Office news conference, said that he is considering pardoning the people involved in a plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, in 2020. The president said, "I will take a look at it. It's been brought to my attention. I did watch the trial. It looked to me like somewhat of a railroad job. I'll be honest with you, it looked to me like some people said some pretty stupid things." And President Trump today pardoned reality TV couple Todd and Julie Chrisley. Prosecutors said during the trial, the couple conspired to defraud community banks out of more than $30 million in loans and evaded federal income taxes for years. Todd was sentenced to 12 years in prison and Julie to 7 years. Also today, President Trump nominated Emil Bove, a top Justice Department official who once worked as President Trump's criminal defense attorney, to be a federal judge, Third U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. In a Truth Social post, the president said Emil is smart, tough, and respected by everyone. He will end the weaponization of justice, restore the rule of law, and do anything else that is necessary to make America great again. Emil Bove will never let you down, the president wrote. Bove must be confirmed by the Senate before assuming the role. This is Washington Today. From Associated Press, hundreds of Palestinians stormed a UN food warehouse Wednesday in Gaza in a desperate attempt to get something to eat, shouting and shoving each other and even ripping off pieces of the building to get inside. 4 people died in the chaos, hospital officials said. Deaths came a day after a crowd was fired upon while overrunning a new aid distribution site in the Gaza Strip set up by an Israeli and U.S.-backed foundation, killing at least 1 Palestinian and wounding 48 others. The Gaza Health Ministry said Wednesday. That was from AP. The UN Security Council held a meeting on this subject today. John Kelly, the acting U.S. alternate UN representative, spoke on behalf of the United States.
The United States supports getting assistance to civilians in Gaza in a way that does not allow Hamas to benefit. We support the new initiative to resume the flow of aid through pre-existing mechanisms in advance of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's mechanism becoming fully operational. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is an independent entity established to provide a secure mechanism for the delivery of aid directly to those in need. We call on the UN to work with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and Israel to reach agreements on how to operationalize this system in a way that works for all. One that provides the opportunity to deliver aid directly to civilians without diversion by Hamas and other terrorist and criminal groups. The United States will support a future for the people of Gaza that is free of Hamas and full of opportunity. As President Trump emphasized during his recent visit, before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts and tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together. The the United States will do its part to help forge this new reality alongside Israel and our Arab partners. But at the same time, the United States stands with Israel in unequivocally rejecting any effort to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state or impose conditions on Israel which would be an unconscionable reward for the heinous Hamas attack on Israel that massacred and brutally kidnapped Israelis and Americans.
John Kelly, acting U.S. alternate United Nations representative at today's UN Security Council meeting. After the other member countries of the council spoke, two invited representatives had a chance on behalf of the Palestinian Observer State and Israel. Riyad Mansour is the Palestinian ambassador.
There is cruelty in the bombardments, cruelty in the wanton destruction, cruelty in the blockade, and even cruelty in the distribution of very limited aid. We will be asked, how can you complain about food finally being delivered after having complained about starvation and famine? Isn't it any aid better than no aid at all? Who said these should be our choices? The doomed fate of our people. A full blockade against an entire civilian population, including 1 million children, depriving them of food, water, medicine, shelter, or a system of aid that is degrading, discriminatory, limited to food and limited in quantity, and which aims at the forcible displacement of the population and at facilitating the unlawful seizing of land. Do you know how we know this is the objective? Israeli officials are openly telling the world that this is their intention. Statement after statement, threat after threat. After seeing starvation used as a weapon of war, now we see aid being used as a weapon of war. Should we remain silent because the alternative is worse? Or should we stand up for the humanity of Palestinians, of all civilians in any situation of armed conflict?
Riyad Mansour, Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations at today's UN Security Council meeting in New York City. Israeli Ambassador Danny Danon also addressed the meeting.
In recent weeks, 4 new aid distribution centers have been established inside Gaza. These centers are operated by international humanitarian organizations and secured by a U.S. civilian security company. They were created to serve one purpose: to ensure aid gets to civilians, not terrorists. 2 of these centers, located in Tel El Sultan in Rafah and the Morag Corridor, began operations yesterday. They are already distributing food packages to thousands of families in need. This is happening despite Hamas's attempts to block civilians reaching the aid by establishing checkpoints and roadblocks. Because Hamas knows if it loses control over the aid, it loses control over the people of Gaza. You know, let's ask ourselves what happened after. Have we heard any condemnation from the UN? Not one word, no statement. But that silence is not the end of the story. It gets worse. The United Nations has once again picked the wrong side. Today, I reveal shocking information. Not only has the UN refused to condemn Hamas for its efforts to sabotage the new aid centers. We have seen the pictures of Hamas blocking people. But the UN is now actively joining Hamas in trying to block that aid. The UN is using threats, intimidation, and retaliation against NGOs that choose to participate in the new humanitarian mechanism.
Israeli Ambassador Danny Danon speaking at the UN Security Council meeting today at the UN in New York City. Times of Israel has a story. U.S. Special Envoy to the Mideast, Steve Witkoff, says he has some very good feelings about the chances for reaching a temporary ceasefire that leads to a long-term resolution of the conflict in Gaza. Earlier today, a source familiar with the negotiations told the Times of Israel that Hamas sent its edits to Witkoff's temporary hostage deal proposal back to the U.S. for review. Witkoff subsequently went over the document with Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer yesterday. Hamas is now waiting to receive what Witkoff appears to refer to as a term sheet. That was from the Times of Israel article. Steve Witkoff spoke in the White House Oval Office during the news conference with President Trump.
I think that we are on the precipice of sending out a new term sheet that hopefully will be delivered later on today. The president is going to review it. And I have some very good feelings about getting to a long-term resolution, temporary ceasefire, and a long-term resolution, a peaceful resolution of that conflict.
Steve Witkoff, U.S. Special Envoy to the Mideast, today in the White House Oval Office. Story from CNN. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Wednesday that a recent airstrike killed Mohammed Sinwar, Hamas's elusive de facto leader in Gaza, the latest in a string of assassinations that have dealt a serious blow to the group's top brass, but are yet to break its grip on power. Netanyahu made the announcement during a speech in the Knesset, Israel's parliament, as the country marks 600 days since the Hamas attacks of October 7, 2023. That was from CNN. President Trump today confirmed a New York Times report that he asked the Israeli Prime Minister in a phone call last week to postpone military action against Iran while the U.S. is working towards finalizing a new nuclear agreement with that country. The President got the question in the Oval Office.
Did you warn Prime Minister Netanyahu against taking some sort of actions that could disrupt the talks there in a phone call last week?
Well, I'd like to be honest. Yes, I did. Next question, please.
Mr. President, just the last one on sanctions.
I did, yeah.
If Senate Republicans want to push
It's not a warning. I said I don't think it's appropriate.
What exactly did you tell him? Did you
I just said I don't think it's appropriate. We're having very good discussions with him, and I said I don't think it's appropriate right now. Because if we can settle it with a very strong document, very strong, with inspections and no trust. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody. So no trust. I want it very strong where we can go in with inspectors. We can take whatever we want. We can blow up whatever we want, but nobody getting killed. We can blow up a lab, but nobody's going to be in the lab, as opposed to everybody being in the lab and blowing it up, right? Two ways of doing it. Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution. Now, that could change at any moment. Could change with a phone call. But right now, I think they want to make a deal, and if we can make a deal, save a lot of lives.
President Donald Trump at his news conference in the White House Oval Office. AP reports that Iran and the U.S. so far have held 5 rounds of talks in both Muscat, Oman, and in Rome. A 6th round has yet to be set. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter Word for Word and get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.